people come on in.
It's all about your target audience.
Right?
You just find that audience who likes how you're playing your instrument.
I'll remember that.
We've been talking about target audience a lot in this
We have.
series. Yeah.
Yeah, we have. I'm looking forward to today too. In fact, I think what we'll do, it looks like most people are already coming online here. I'll give it about 20 seconds and we'll get started. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Augustine, Recovery Business Advisor for North Central Texas Small Business Development Centers, a leading provider for assistance for small businesses. We are grant funded, which allows us to offer this webinar and many other services at no cost to you. Delivering your presentation, How to Perform Like a Pro, today is being presented by Ms. Lorna Kibbe. If you would please leave your questions in the chat box and we'll be happy to get to them as we go or at the end when Lorna is finished. For those of you who don't know Lorna, she's an ASBDC conference speaker and she has 10 years experience working at the SBDC Florida Gulf Coast University. She is also a leadership expert and we are very happy to have her here today presenting to you, delivering your presentation, How to Perform Like a Pro.
Thank you, Brett. Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So you got me, right?
I do.
Okay. Well, this is exciting because we have been doing a series. I know some of you have been to several of the sessions and you know they're all recorded. And I know at the end, Brett will tell you how to access those just in case you missed it. But we've been doing a series on amazing presentations. And I think it's been really fun. We have gone really in depth on a lot of points about making presentations. I mean, I feel like this is a really comprehensive series that we've done, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And today is here we go, you know, what is it? The icing on top of the cake. You know, this is the last piece. This is delivery. Now, a lot of things that we've been talking about tap into the delivery part because it's really all one cake, right? It's all one package. But I want to give you some tips for just that piece, how to deliver like a pro. So the roadmap for today, and now you know what the roadmap is because you understand roadmaps, is on your mark, get set, go. So first we're going to talk about what you need to do before you even enter the room. You know, what goes into being ready to present. Get set, excuse me, get set is about the piece when we're just getting ready to present our content, and then go when you're live. So that's our roadmap for today. So let's start with this. On your mark, first things first. You may recognize these subjects because these are the subjects of the entire series. These have been all of the different things that we've done in this series. We did a whole session on designing your presentation. We did one on creating your content. All of this happens way before you get up in front of people, right? Rehearsing your stories, you know, picking out your stories, rehearsing those, planning for your visuals, your PowerPoint, making sure everything's good with that, you know, making them masterful and effective, and testing it against the 5 must-dos. And the 5 must-dos was the very first session that we did for the series. And the 5 must-dos, you might remember the roadmap for that was the vowels, right? A-E-I-O-U, actionable, engaging, interesting, organized, and you focused. So that's the first thing, is making sure that you have that presentation ready to go. All of that happens before you even think about getting up in front of people. So if you haven't seen these sessions, you might want to go back and review them. Having your presentation together, knowing your stuff before you present, that's really the main thing. You know, that's the key. It's like a lot of people worry when they start to make a presentation, you know, they're so nervous and they're worried about how it's going to cross. They're worried about how they look. If you know your presentation, if you know your materials, if you've taken time to really do these things, you know, design it, prepare that content to make sure you're including the right things, thought about your main message, made sure that everything's going to tie back into your main message, that everything is relevant, that you have stories to tell to keep people engaged, anchors to help them to remember the material, that your PowerPoint is not boring, and it's not the presentation by itself, that you're not reading from your PowerPoint or whatever software you decide to use for slides or whatever visuals you use. I've given you some examples of visuals that people use, like 3D objects, that turned out really bad because people couldn't see them and that kind of thing. So all of these kind of things are necessary first. If you've done all this, your chances of success when you deliver go up astronomically. The one big thing about this is when you're prepared, when you've done all this first, your confidence level is first of all much higher. And having confidence in front of an audience is so important. They will eat you alive if they think that you don't know what you're talking about. So you've got to get up there and show them that you know what you're talking about. It's funny because sometimes people ask me about my rehearsal process before I do a presentation. And I kind of chuckle because I don't rehearse what I'm going to say. The truth is, I've spent so much time doing these things that I know that presentation inside and out. The morning of the presentation, sometimes I'll stand in the shower, and you know how you have those little tiles in your shower? I can visualize my PowerPoint slides on those tiles in the shower, just to help me to remember what my flow is going to be and where I'm going to be. So rehearsing what I'm going to say isn't really important at this point because I've done so much work to prepare it. I've put the whole thing together. I've really done it thoughtfully. I'm ready to go. And that makes a huge difference in being successful in your presentation. It takes care of a lot of the nerves because you're not nervous about, will I remember what I'm supposed to say? You've done your homework in advance. So that's on your mark. First things first, go through everything you need to do to make sure that your presentation is good, that it has a main message, that everything's related to that message, that it's going to be engaging and not boring and easy for your audience to understand and follow you. Thus the roadmap, right? Okay, so that's first. So now it's time to get set. And this is behind the scenes. This is what happens as you prepare the room, as you prepare yourself, but this is before anybody comes in. This is like the day of the presentation, or maybe a couple days before, but this is like all the presentations ready, you've written the content, you have it ready, you're getting ready to make this presentation. So there's a few things that you want to do. And roadmap for this section is check, inspect, and reflect. There's things that you need to check on. There are things that you need to inspect. And I want to talk to you about just that few moments that you have before the first audience member shows up, how you kind of reflect and put yourself in the moment for doing the presentation. Okay, so let's start with check. What do we need to check? Well, the first thing, I know it sounds silly, but the presentation time and place. And the reason for that is because you'd be surprised how things get mixed up sometimes. I've gone to presentations where I was the only person in the room and nobody showed up because they changed the room and nobody told me that their room changed. But you know what? That's on me because I didn't confirm. I learned that lesson. I didn't, like 2 days before, say, I just want to make sure I've got this right. This is the room I'm going to, So it happens. So checking on those things and even the time, what's really interesting, especially if you're doing virtual presentations, are time zones. Every time I do a presentation here, I have to think about that because many of you are on Central Time. I don't know. I'm sure there's people there with other time zones. I'm in the Eastern time zone. I wake up thinking, do I present at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock? So I really have to be on top of that and think about it. That's pretty awful to mess that up. So you have to be careful to make sure you verify that time. I always, in my email messages beforehand, I always put the time zone as part of it, like 10 o'clock CT, to make sure that someone's doing 10 o'clock Central Time, and that we don't get mixed up on the time zone. The other interesting thing about presenting, and this is just an extra tip for you on presenting, did you know that according to the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, the very best time to present is 10 a.m.? Isn't that interesting? Why 10 a.m.? They say 10 a.m. because what they find is by 10 a.m., first of all, the audience has had some time to check their email, to have enough coffee, to dispense of that coffee, to have breakfast. to feel like they have kind of their affairs in order before they go to a presentation. So that's good for them. For you, they say it's good because a lot of the same things. You've had time to have some coffee, to have, a light breakfast, to kind of prepare, have a few minutes to run over things, look at your notes, whatever, and feel more confident going in. What they caution about, what we all caution about, is trying not to do it like run it right at lunchtime, because people are hungry, back to Maslow, right? If I'm hungry, I'm not listening to you. So think about, am I doing this too late in the day? Am I doing this too early in the day? Am I doing it on a Friday? And the only thing standing between you and that weekend, your audience and that big weekend is you? That's not good. So 10 o'clock, that's the best time. If you have a choice. I know a lot of times we don't have a choice, but if you do, there you go. That's a hot tip for you. 10 o'clock a.m., best time to present. All right, so check on your presentation time and place and just confirm and make sure that you know where it is and what time it is and that you're going to be in the same place as the audience at the same time. That really is helpful. All right, I also want you to check your handouts beforehand. If you do handouts, lots of opinions on handouts, so I get to tell you mine. The worst handout I've ever seen is when somebody takes their PowerPoint slides and puts them on a piece of paper with those 3 little lines next to it. That's awful. Please don't do that. You know why I think that's awful? I think it's awful because if your PowerPoint slides tell the story enough so that that's what I can use for my notes, I really don't need to see your presentation. There's no reason for me to come. I can just read the slides. If I can read it, because when you put 3 on a page, it gets little and your text is kind of hard to read. Can I even read it? Can I understand it? I just think it's a really bad way to do a handout. I would rather see no handout than that. What some people do with handouts, I've made this mistake myself, is I tried to put too much content in my handouts. I was writing down for them what I thought. What I need to do is give them a prompt so that they write down what they think. Because that's where learning really occurs, right? That's where transformation occurs. Like, what am I going to do with this information? We've talked time and time again about how important it is that they not just spend this hour with you, but that they do something afterwards. So give them room to write their thoughts about what they're going to do next with that content, not just to read what you wrote about it. So let them write down what they're thinking, not what you're thinking. Sometimes I know you have to have handouts. There are technical documents. There are things you can't put on PowerPoint slides. It's too hard to see. There are things that you need to review. The caution here is don't set yourself up for failure by handing those handouts out during your presentation. You're trying to juggle so much when you're doing your presentation. You don't need to add that kind of stress. Plus, it's a huge disruption. Have you ever been in a situation where they're doing handouts and the presenter is still talking? And what are you doing while the handouts are coming around? You've tuned out of the presenter. You're watching where the handouts are to make sure you get one, right? Anything that you do to take the audience's attention off of what you're saying is a big mistake. So handouts is the same thing. If you have to do handouts, give them all out at the beginning. Some people say, but there are things I don't want them to know, like I'm going to give them a quiz and I need to give them the answer sheet. And I don't want to give them the answer sheet. You don't have to give them the answer sheet. Put the answers up on a PowerPoint slide after they've taken the quiz. Then they can circle their own answers. There are ways around it. So don't just, do one handout at a time. If you're going to do handouts, one handout, one packet. Another thing you can do, sometimes I've seen, there's like a brochure that they should have or something. Don't give it out in advance. See, what you're doing is you're making me choose. Do I want to listen to you? Do I want to look at your PowerPoint slide, or do I want to read this brochure or this information? Don't make me choose, because something is going to lose out there, right? So give it out at the end. If it's a brochure that's a little bit longer, just say to them, hey, there are these brochures that you need. Please take them on your way out the door. Actually, having them pick it up at the end is a pretty good idea, I found, because sometimes I make a whole lot more copies than I need. and I find out people didn't really want them, it's heartbreaking to see your handout go in the garbage can on the way out the door, right? Yeah. So it's kind of good to like leave it for the end, because that way the people who want a handout, and some people do, and that's cool, they can have it. But there are some people who really don't. They don't want the paper. They'd rather just make notes on their phone. That's fine, you know, on their device, that's fine. Let them do that. So don't force them to take this piece of paper that they don't want, and it's just going to end up in the, if we're lucky, recycle bin, if we're not, in the garbage. So check your handouts, make sure that there's no typos, you know, that they say what you want them to say, make sure they're good, because really those handouts are a reflection of you, and you need to double check them for errors and that kind of thing. I tell you, it's hard. You know what my problem is? The word you and your. I type Y-O-U-R, and every time the computer makes it Y-O-U, I don't know what's wrong with my computer. I think I need a new computer. Always double check those things, especially when you know you have things like that to happen to you all the time. Now I do a check for you and your on every document before I submit it, because I know that's something that seems to happen to me. Why ever it happens. But anyway, so make sure you double check it, and, you know, maybe have someone proofread for you. So be careful with those handouts, but that should all be ready in advance so that there's going to be no stress during the presentation of handing those things out. No worries. It's good. It's calm. All right. The next thing you want to check is just make sure you have access to everything that you need for the presentation. And I mean everything. I carry all these little dongles with me, because some computers, you know, HDMI, Apple computers, all this stuff, some setups in some rooms don't have the connections that you need. Man, talk about making you nervous. That's a disaster when you go into a room, you try to hook up to their equipment and nobody has the connector that you need. That can really rock your boat. So just carry that stuff with you. Make sure you have it in advance, and just check for, you know, what kind of plugs are you gonna need, that kind of thing. Make sure you have it. Access to data. I know you've seen this. Somebody is doing a presentation and they say, let me show you a quick video, right? And then they hit go and nothing is playing because they can't get access to the internet, or just decides not to work on that day, whatever. You know, this data access problem can be really a problem. If I'm going to show a video, I embed it in my slides or I don't use it. If I can't embed it, I don't use it. It's just too dangerous. And there's a lot of really great software out there that's actually free. I have free software that I use. Did I write down the name for you? No, but I have great free software. I can get that to you. I'll pass it on. But it's free, and it converts. There's a lot out there though. It converts the YouTube videos to MP4, so that I can embed them. Just always be careful not to violate any copyright laws or anything like that. But yeah, be careful, like with the video and the data access. Make sure that the projector is in the room, you know, see if the equipment's there. You might even want to go check it out. But I'm going to suggest in a few minutes that you inspect it and make sure, because weird things can happen with those. But just I've gone into rooms where they didn't even have it, and I assumed they would have that kind of equipment in their conference room. That's on me. Even markers. I don't know if you've ever been in a position where you stand up there, write on a flip chart or a whiteboard, and you pick up the marker and it's dry, or the ink's so far gone that you can't see it. Those kind of things are challenging enough without those kind of problems. I carry my own markers with me. I even carry my own remote, there you go, to advance slides. And the reason I carry my own remote to advance slides is because if I try to use the one that's in the room or that somebody supplies to me, the buttons are in a different place. And instead of advancing the slide, I black the screen and freak out, right? I don't need that kind of pressure. So I carry my own remote so that I know where the buttons are every time, with extra batteries. So just make sure that everything you're going to need, that you have it, that it's all together in one place so that you can take it. If you're going somewhere to do a presentation for somebody else that you're not, it's not your conference room, it's not your site, it's not your organization, even check with them. Do you want me to bring my laptop, or do you want me to bring a flash drive? Here's the danger. Flash drive. That sounds so simple and cool. And then you plug it in and find out that their version of whatever software you're using, PowerPoint or whatever, is not the same version you've been using, and nothing works the same. And it throws you off as the presenter. I've had that happen too. So now I insist on using my own laptop, or I'll ask for what version of PowerPoint are you using? And they usually don't know and have to find out. So there's all kinds of things like that that can throw you off. And if you want to make an amazing presentation, you're not going to let that happen because you're going to think of all this in advance. In the book that we've been talking about, my book on how to make a better presentation, I actually have checklists in there for you of things. Make your own checklist of all the things that when you get ready to do a presentation, you want to make sure that you have it ready for you. Let's see, what else might you need access to? Well, we'll talk about more as we go along. If anybody can think of anything, put it in chat. Let's hear what I haven't talked about that we need to talk about. All right, so these are things we need to check. There are also things we need to inspect. And that means we need to check them out before we go live. So we need to inspect. We need to inspect the room setup. Now, this is important. And if you have any control over it, you might even suggest a particular room setup. I've gone into rooms where I didn't think about it far enough in advance. And my favorite story, well, there's two favorite stories about room setup. The one was, it was a nonprofit, and I was doing a training session for them, like a 3-hour session. And I walked into the room, and I've never seen anything quite like it. It was pretty awful. There was wallpaper on the walls that was actually peeling off, in huge sheets peeling off. Not one chair matched. The most uncomfortable chairs you can imagine. The tables were scarred and not even the same height, in the room. Like, there were different heights of tables. It was really bad. But you face those things sometimes and you have to deal with it. So you don't want to be surprised for it. So I go in the room and check and go, holy cow, and have my little freak out, before anybody comes in the room, and see what I can do to fix it. In that case, what I did was I pulled the tables apart because they had them together and they were different heights. That's, hazardous. So I pulled them apart. A couple of the chairs that were not functional at all, like, if you sit on this, you will probably die. I just kind of sat in the hallway. Sometimes you have to do these things. The other story, the other room I had that was really challenging, and I did several presentations in this room, they had these columns that were right in the middle of the room, 4 of them, like they were like holding up the ceiling or something. I think they were functional, but they were awful. I can't believe they made this room a conference room and they had chairs and tables right behind these columns. And it's like, there's no way to see around those columns. There's no way for them to see you or the slides. And people would sit there because they wanted to. So that took some creative work on my part to pull all the tables and chairs far away from those things. And then I even had to say, because these people were so used to being able to hide behind those, I even had to say to a few people, please don't move those back in front of the columns. I purposely spread those apart. So check the room. Here's a couple of tips for you on inspecting your room. If you're looking at the slides right now, here's some different room configurations. And what I'll do many times is I'll tell them exactly how I want the room set up. They have different purposes for what kind of presentations you're doing. If you're doing this, you can see that in this configuration, you have like round tables. They look oval in the picture, but they have a few seats around them. If you're planning on doing some group discussions, it's really great to go ahead and have them set the room up like this, because then they can do group discussions at the table. Nobody has to move around, and it's really nice for group discussions. So if you want that, that's a great configuration. This one right here, I don't know that it really has any great benefit except that it looks cool. But it does have nice exit and entrance capabilities here. It's people can get in and out easily, which is nice. Depending on your conference room, that might be nice. This is a really standard configuration, the U shape. The thing that's nice about this, when I like to use this, is I think you'll remember from other presentations I made that one of my big things is DISC. I do DISC workshops. So when I'm doing DISC workshops, which is personality preferences, I like this configuration because people are looking at each other the whole time. And, they can see each other's reactions about their style and about how they're using their style. And it's like they can have direct conversations, verbally and nonverbal, right across the table. So I like that when I want everybody to be really included in the discussion and involved, because it also allows me then to walk right into this view as I'm moving around the room and be effective. And this one over here is good when you just kind of have everybody pointing towards the screen up here. And just a nice general configuration. Instead of just putting the table straight, you slant them. I'm not sure there's a great advantage to it, except that it kind of looks nice. When I do a presentation, honestly, here's my favorite configuration. This is what I like. And I actually did this myself on my computer and created this picture. And I send this when I'm going to a strange place where I don't know what their room is like. I send them this picture and I tell them this is what I want. So it depends on the number of people I have. If I have 20, 30 people, I like this configuration. And the reason I like it is because everybody can see the slides. And sometimes when you leave it up to them to create their own configuration, they forget to make sure that everybody can see the slides or can see the front of the room. So this ensures that everybody can see. See, there's no seat here on the end. And people will try to pull a seat up here because they want to be with their pals. And I step in and say, I'd like to leave that open. I'm just choosing another table. So leave that open so that everybody can see. And also I have them in groups already. So if I want to do any kind of group discussion, it's really easy for me. I can just say, at your tables, have a discussion about this, and that's all is good. So this is what I send out to people and give them instructions on how I want the room set up. So you can do that too. If you're going to a strange place where you don't know. One of the funniest things I have ever seen is I went into an organization and I didn't have an opportunity to ask for this in advance. So I went in and I set it up this way myself, their conference room. People started coming in the room with absolute shock on their face. And they were making the funniest comments like, I didn't know these tables could move. Wow, this is really neat. Why don't we have it like this all the time? It's like nobody ever thought about, just moving the tables around. And remember that when we talk about presentations, sometimes you're just talking about your staff meeting or whatever. I mean, it's good to change the tables around. It gives people a little bit different perspective. If you're using that same room over and over again, move the tables around, do a different configuration every now and then. Gives people kind of a different perspective, and it's kind of refreshing, to come in and the room looks different. Makes you feel a little better. So your room setup is something that you need to inspect. You also just need to test everything, inspect everything that you're about to do. So, the projector and the camera, this one was funny. I worked in this room where an organization painted their wall white. You can buy paint to show your PowerPoint slides on a wall, like if you have a room that's dedicated to that. So instead of the screen, they got rid of their old screen and they painted it white, and it was really nice. And they put up their projector, they hung it up. They used to just have it on a table. So they put it up on the ceiling. Should have been great, but the projector didn't have enough power in the light to project on that wall, on that white wall. And so the slides looked all washed out. You couldn't read a lot of them, especially when they used any kind of color. The only way you could see them is if they were black and white. And you could only see the black because the white was washed out on the wall. So even though it was a really cool configuration, they actually had to go and buy a new projector because they're, I think it's called lumens, it just didn't have enough light to hit that wall. So check to see, is this working okay? Another room I went in, they had it set up so that this really bright window shined right on the screen. Like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? What can I do with this? I had to go and find some boards and some cardboard in the recycle bin and put it up over the window so that they could see the screen. These things happen, So check your computer or their computer. Make sure everything's plugged in where it needs to be. If you're doing a conference, if any of you do conferences, a lot of times they'll have an AV person there that will help you with this kind of stuff. But I don't even depend on that. I make sure that I have my stuff together because you don't know what's going to happen. It's all on me. It's all on the presenter. Make sure your PowerPoint is running well. It's looking good. Your remote, like I said, I use my own, your markers. Everything that you're going to use. If you have a flip chart, if you're going to use a flip chart, make sure that when you press on the paper that the flip chart doesn't fall over. That's embarrassing. Been there, yeah. Somebody didn't get the stand adjusted right. You put your marker on it and the whole thing falls on the floor. Such funny stories. So test everything that you're going to use. Just make sure that everything is in order for you. And inspect the sound situation, because sometimes they don't always have speakers in the room. You're going to play a video or you're going to do something with sound and find out there's no speakers except for the ones you have on your laptop. And I can assure you, no matter how small your presentation is, they can't hear the speakers on your laptop. So if you're going to use any kind of sound, make sure that there's speakers or some way for it to be heard. This is probably one of the things that I have happen to me most frequently is I go in and I have no way to, if I'm going to play a video or any kind of audio file, they have no way to put speakers in the room. They run up to the 5th floor and try to get portable speakers and take them off of somebody's desk. And it's, So if you're doing anything with sound, make sure that the room is equipped for it. And also the microphone. And this is something that I have to work with new presenters on a lot, because people are kind of afraid of the microphone. They don't really want to use a microphone. I mean, you've probably heard this, my voice projects and I don't need a microphone. That's wrong. Even if you have a really loud voice, you're asking yourself to keep it at that really high level for the entire presentation. And the very last tip I'm going to give you today is just to be natural. Well, you can't be natural if you're talking like this the whole presentation so everybody can hear you. That's not natural. And you want to talk in a natural voice, so you need that microphone. If you use a handheld mic, hold it right under your chin. I personally don't like a handheld mic. I much prefer one that clips on, a clip-on mic that's called a lavalier. The reason I like that better is because it allows my hands to be free. I don't like to hold a microphone for the whole presentation. I also don't like to be tied to a podium. They'll put it on the podium. Don't like that either. A lot of times you'll have to ask, do you have the clip-on mic? Do you have the lavalier? And they'll have it. They just think, it's easier not to use it, but I would really recommend it. And I would, even in your organizations, depending on the size of your room. I mean, yeah, there's some rooms that are small enough that you'll be okay, but so many times you're not okay, especially if you have more than maybe 20 in your audience. You have to remember that it's not just you here, it's the audience members. And really, it's being disrespectful to your audience to assume that everybody can hear you. Because I assure you, there are people in the room who have listening issues, who have hearing issues, who will not tell you. So it would be really nice if you made it easy for them to hear you. So inspect the sound, find out what's going on in the room, and just make sure that people are going to be able to hear what's going on. A recent conference that I did, I was doing a keynote, and what was really disturbing to me was that they didn't have any handheld mics for the audience. They got me my lavalier, everything was fine, but I'm like, well, what if the audience wants to ask questions? There were 120 people. It was a really large room. Like, the audience didn't take up half of the room. It was really large. And they're like, oh, well, we never thought, people would be included in it. And I'm like, well, of course, I want them to be able to ask questions. I'm going to ask them questions. I need responses. So they really had to scramble to find a couple of handheld mics for the audience. So if you're going to have the audience ask questions, and depending on the size of your room, you want to prepare for that scenario as well. And if you do have a handheld mic, or if you have the lavalier, test it out, walk around the room. You'll find that there are some places in the room that you cannot go to, or it will squeal loudly and make everybody fall off their chairs. So you'll kind of get a feel for that before people come in the room, where you can go with that mic and what you can do. So test that all out. And of course, test the little button for, muting sound, turning it off, so that if you decide to go to the restroom, turn it off before you go to the restroom. That's not nice to leave it on while you're in the restroom. And it's projecting all over the conference room. I've never done that. All right, so inspect your sound. Okay, finally, in this section, we want to reflect. Now, we're getting ready for the audience to come in. We're in the room now. We've checked everything. We've inspected everything. We have just a few minutes before anybody comes in the room. And this is an important key too. You need to beat the audience to the room. You should always be the first person in the room. Maybe the AV person, if you have one, could be first, but you should be the first person in the room. You should be there when that first person walks in. So in your organization or whatever kind of a presentation you're doing, you know your folks. Are they going to straggle in at 5 till, or are they going to be coming a half an hour in advance? And maybe there's that one person who's going to come a half an hour in advance. You need to be there for them. It's really important. So you need to give yourself this time to reflect before that first person walks in. So these are some tips on getting you ready just before the audience starts to come in. First of all, some secrets for personal prep. Lukewarm water is your friend. That's what the picture shows. Not cold water and not hot water, not hot tea, none of that, because those things constrict your vocal cords. Cold water constricts your vocal cords. Hot water produces mucus. So lukewarm water is what you want to have. Be careful about eating a big meal beforehand. It's not good coming back up when you get excited, adrenaline and all those nerves and everything. Also, there are bodily noises that can occur if you eat the wrong kinds of things, like carbonated beverages. This does not sound good coming over your microphone. So be careful about what you eat, prepare yourself in that way. Dairy products too provide mucus for some people, so avoid those dairy products. So those are just some personal things that you can do to make sure that you're ready to be in front of people. As for the room, the ideal temperature for the room is 70 to 73. Sometimes we have control over this and sometimes we don't, right? But if you do have control, if you can get in there and set that thermometer somewhere between 70 and 73, this is a good temperature because it will keep your audience from freezing to death. And back to Maslow, if you've been in a room where people are freezing to death, sitting there shivering, they're not paying attention to you if they are freezing to death or if they're sweating to death, right? But the interesting thing that happens to some presenters is you're up, you're talking to people, so you're expending more energy, which means you start to get really warm. So if you're dressed like Brett today, looking all cute and everything in your 3-piece suit, right? You're sweating, man, you're hot. But if you go between 70 to 73, you have a better chance of remaining cooler, and they have a better chance of not freezing to death. And usually they know to bring sweaters and stuff. So 70 to 73 is kind of the sweet spot. If you have any control over it, try to get your thermostat set at that temperature. And we know, being people in organizations, that doesn't mean that it works 5 minutes in advance. Usually, some of those things you have to set an hour in advance, especially some of those rooms that aren't used very often. I go in rooms sometimes that nobody's been in for a couple of days, and man, the thermometer's 82, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'm trying to get it down. It's not going to happen by the end of my presentation if I wait until just before, right? So sometimes getting in there and trying to take care of that, or see if there's somebody that can help you. Okay, and finally, take a moment before they start to come in the room to do whatever you need to do to get in your headspace. And I have seen some pretty funny things. That the dancing lady, this one reminds me, I think I might have told you this story during this presentation series, but I'll tell you again. My daughter was attending FSU, Florida State University orientation. And, it was parents come with the kids. This was their first orientation. And they had a motivational speaker come to talk to the kids about, being students and what's going to happen at FSU and how they're going to be amazing people and all this stuff. And the speaker, we were seated in a way that we could see just to the back of where he was coming out, just to the left. And I could see him back there getting ready to come out. He was dancing. I'm telling you what, if I tried to do the stuff that guy was doing, I wouldn't have been able to get up there and talk to people, because I would have been no breath. He was like stretching up and down, and he was very, very physical, doing squats and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoa, dude. So, but if that's your thing, if that pumps you up and, you feel like energized, then, okay for you, you do that, but whatever works. Maybe some stretching, some light stretching, or just stop and take some deep breaths and put your feet up for a minute and think about it. Or maybe you want to pray. I frequently do. I have this whole little thing I kind of go through, and actually many professional speakers will tell you this if you ask, but it's not something we talk about a lot. But I kind of have this whole thing in my head about what I want to think about before I go on stage, of reminding myself that it's about the audience, reminding myself that everything I do is not about me, not about how I come across, but what they take away, and asking for help and delivering the right message in the right way to the people that are sitting there in front of me and making their experience great. So whatever works for you is what you need to do, but do just take a moment, just to clear your head and get ready for that first person who starts to walk through the door. Okay. So all of those things are getting ready just before the big event. Showtime, live and in person. Go, go, go. Here we go. Okay, so here's the first thing. Did you know that your presentation begins before the presentation begins? Yeah, the presentation begins when that first person walks in the door. So it's very important that you're there to greet people as they come in and introduce yourself to as many people as you can. I know we don't shake hands anymore. Fist bump, whatever, bow, hello, just say a wave, whatever. But saying hello to people, this is really important for you in your presentation, because you're making friends that are going to support you when you start speaking. They're going to be like, oh, Julie was so friendly. I like her already. And they're going to be like in a much better mode to talk to you, to listen to you speak and to support you. Sometimes what I do is secretly, I have a little, have a few little notes with me. I'll write down some names. I'll write down, Anna, and then I'll write down like Lori. And I just kind of keep that so that I can remember the names of some people in the audience. And at appropriate times during the presentation, I'll say, I met Anna just before this presentation. And we were talking about this storm and how it impacts the PowerPoint, because it might go off, So if I just like include some of the names of people that I met, that makes me sound so friendly. It makes everybody more relaxed. It's like, oh yeah, okay. It's like, it just makes everybody go, oh, so just taking time to meet people. What do you say to them when you meet them? Usually what I say is, hey, how are you? What are you hoping to get out of this today? I want to make sure I'm covering things. Just give me some tips. What do you think I should be? What should I watch out for? And it helps me to understand what their frame of mind is. I can start to feel like what their mood is, whether they're really excited right now about this or whether they're just here because they have to be here. So I can kind of start to feel from them what their mood is, which is really important because I have to make sure that I meet them where they are. We've talked about this quite a bit, opening with purpose. So when I open, I need to be getting my message across, and we've gone through a lot of tips for opening, but I also have to match their energy. And if I've done my work up front to start meeting people and get a feel for how things are going, I can do that. If I come at this audience like that, and that's not where they're at, I just lost them in the first 10 seconds. All this work that I did to prepare is gone because I lost them already. I really have to match it. Now, there are some times when this is what they want, but you have to know where your audience is and you have to match that. The thing is if your mission during your presentation is to take them to this, you can get them there, but you got to start where they are, not where you are. So you got to start with where your audience is. So that's why it's really good to do that work up front, to meet people as they come in, so you can kind of see what the mood is and kind of match that going in. I've had a couple of presentations where I didn't start out real happy because, one that I talk about is that people had got laid off, and I didn't know, the organizer didn't tell me that people had been laid off that morning, but I knew just from the vibe in the room that people were not in a really happy mood today. I just didn't know why. So I kind of had to, kind of hold back a little bit what I was doing, because I was supposed to be giving them a motivational speech about change. And to come in and start talking about, change is really a great thing. We like change, that would not have gone well. So, so you've got to match your audience. And I've talked about this in the series as well. Don't speak to everyone, speak to one and look to all. And just a reminder of what that is, you'll remember that you may have noticed even today, I never say, how many of you have done this? I ask, have you ever been in a situation like this? Have you ever done this? And you'll recall that the reason I'm doing that is because I want you to feel like I'm talking just to you. Again, just a quick refresher. If I say, how many of you have done this? Then what's happening is while you're raising your hand, you're looking around the room and saying, oh, a lot of people have done this. That's interesting. But if I say, have you ever done this? Your thought process is completely different. It's like, oh, I remember I did do that one time. I could have done better with that, or that was really fun. So it makes you think about yourself, reflect on your own experience instead of what you see around the room. I need to feel like you're speaking directly to me. And if you've been in a situation where somebody gives you that eye contact when they're presenting, you know what I'm talking about. It's just a special thing. It's like, oh, they looked right at me. They got me. That was interesting, right? So you need to work to make every person in the audience feel like you're speaking just to them, just to me. Make it a conversation. This really helps you with nerves, and it helps the audience just to be much more engaged. And what I mean by this is you're not really presenting to people, you're sharing information. So you're actually having a conversation. And when I'm, even with this, even though it's not easy on Zoom, you hear me saying things like, have you ever seen this? Have you ever done this? And I'm looking for you for affirmation. I'm looking for you to confirm. And when I see it, I usually acknowledge it because I feel like I'm just having a conversation with you about this topic. If we all feel like we're having a conversation, everybody's going to be much more engaged. You're going to be much less nervous. People are going to feel like they're a part of it, like you are talking to them. So this is one tip that I give people when they're really nervous, especially new people who are doing presentations for the first time. It's like, don't think about you're presenting to people. Think about you have this information that you're going to share, and you're going to have a conversation with them about this information, which means they're open to be a part of it and to give input. I don't see much input in chat, by the way. And since this is Zoom, know that you're willing to put information in the chat. I only see one thing up there, so feel free to chat. All right, so make it a conversation. And here's another pro tip. Never noticeably read from slides or notes like I just did, because that's very noticeable. It's never okay to read your PowerPoint slides verbatim. That is like a rookie mistake, and also erodes your credibility very quickly. You'll notice that with most of my slides, you may have noticed this. It's a picture with one topic, like a heading. You don't see bullet points on my slide. That's the information I present to you. So very picturesque slides that help you to think about what I'm saying, but I'm not going to compete with the slide. So I'm not going to read from the slide. I need to know what I'm talking about, and never put information on there that would have to be read verbatim. Every now and then, I'll have something like a quote or some kind of statistic that I want to make sure I get right. And I'll say, you won't believe this. I wrote this down because I want to make sure that I got it right. 53% of people surveyed by USA Today say that they passed on a career opportunity for advancement because they felt like their presentation skills weren't strong enough. That's the proper way to do it if you have something you want to read like that, but never put it on the slide and then turn around and say, 53% of people surveyed, so never do it noticeably. When I talked about PowerPoint about a way for you to make notes on your slides, like I'm using today. So in that session, there's a way for you to do that. And I use that to study and just kind of to guide me along, because at this point, really all I need to know is which picture is next, because I've done all the stuff in Get Ready. I've done all that stuff up front. Here's an important part of presenting. You really want your audience to leave with something, so give them time to think. And at the same time, take some time to think. They need to reflect on what you're saying. They need to think about what it means to them. And this is why transitions are so important that we've talked about. I need some time to think about how this relates to me and what I'm going to do with it. And if you're presenting information to me so quickly that I can't think, then I'm really going to miss a lot of it. And that's not what we're going for. So how do we give think time during a presentation? I just did. I just gave you think time. I asked a question and I just stopped. How do we give think time during a presentation? Give you a second to think. And then people can start answering that question if you have time for that. Let a couple people give answers, but while they're giving answers, people are gathering more and more information. Now, if you've taken advantage of the room setup so that you have them at tables already, a great thing to do is say, there's a lot of ideas about how you can give people think time during presentations, and I bet you all know some of them. So turn to the people at your table or turn to the people next to you and talk about this for 2 minutes, and then I want to hear your best ideas. So they're off now. They're gone for 2 minutes. They're talking about this. That's time that they're reflecting. They're thinking, they're coming up with ideas that they're learning. And guess what's happening to you while they're doing that? You now have think time. While they're off talking for 2 minutes, you just got a 2-minute break. So you can go, what's next? What's my next slide? How am I doing? Is everything okay? Where am I? And you can do that at the same time that you're kind of looking around the room and making sure that everybody is with you and that they're participating. So you give yourself think time in there. One of the things that I often do when I'm doing live presentations, the very beginning is when we're really more nervous, right? If you've done some presentations, you've probably experienced this. It's like, once you get past that opening and stuff, you feel better. It's like, okay, all right, we're here, everybody's here, they're into it, we're good. You start to feel better. What I'll do right after my opening sometimes is I'll say, all right, I want you to just turn to the person next to you and tell them what's the worst problem you ever had in trying to do a presentation. Go ahead, just talk to the person next to you for just a minute. They're doing that. It's helping them to get their head around the subject. And me, I'm sitting here going, okay, I got this. This is all right. So I've got a minute to think and just gather myself, and then I'm ready to go. So there are ways to build that think time in for them, give them time to reflect, and at the same time, take time yourself. Another way to give them an opportunity to reflect, to take think time, is to use that handout with the prompting questions, like best ideas for giving think time. Give them a minute, say, write down your best ideas. Let's see what you come up with. So they do some private brainstorming, right? And at the same time, you're getting a little think time. But be sure to do that with your points. Give them some time, because what matters is not what happens here in this presentation. What matters is what happens when they leave your presentation and what they do with that information. All right, listen while you speak. This one is a little tough, and I think it requires a little practice, but you'll get better at it, because as you learn to use these techniques and relieve the nerves and take the deep breaths and get yourself together, you'll be able to start turning that focus back to your audience and watching what's going on with them. That presentation I was telling you about before, where the people had been laid off, about 20 minutes into the presentation, when I'm really starting to focus on my audience and into it, and I know something's up, I actually see a couple of people openly crying in that presentation. And I stopped and I said, something's up. I was listening, I was watching them while I'm talking, and I see something's up, something's not right. Like, in my first thought is, boy, I'm really bad. Second thought was, something's really wrong. And that's when I found out that they had that layoff this morning, and nobody had told me. And so I had to change direction, because I had to go where my audience was. We had to talk through some of that stuff, try to help relieve them a little bit. instead of just being so upset that they couldn't even pay attention to me, so I changed it all around. But watch what's going on. If you see somebody in the audience who's on their cell phone typing, I wonder what's up. As a matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll say to people, if you want to tweet during this presentation, what a great presentation you're at and how great Lorna Kibbe is, that's fine. Just let me know and I'll pose for a picture so you can do it, make it funny. And so that way I kind of know. Sometimes I'll ask them to use their devices to Google things, but you can kind of tell when they're checking email and when they're on Facebook and that kind of thing. If you see that going on, that's on you. Something's wrong. You're not engaging them. That's what's going on. People are pulling out devices just randomly or having side conversations. You have to control that kind of thing when you're the presenter. If you feel like it's out of control and you don't know what to do, just take a break. Just stop. Just saying, I think it's time for a break. Everybody looks like they're a little tired right now. Let's take 5 minutes. Let's take 10 minutes. Just stand up, stretch, whatever. Give yourself a minute to regroup and think about what you need to do to re-engage everybody. Every now and then I'll call on somebody when that happens, like this guy would probably say, "Hey, Johnson, what are you thinking right now?" That'll bring him back, but I never make him feel, not valued. I always try to make everybody feel valued. I always try to do it in a very friendly way. I never want to, make any of my audience members feel bad. So listen while you speak and forget perfection. Perfection doesn't exist. You'll drive yourself nuts if you're trying to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. We're human, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, your audience actually kind of really likes it when you're not perfect. You see, they don't want to look at you as somebody special. They want to look at you as, I'm just like you. They want to see you as one of the gang, as somebody that they can relate to. And if you're somebody they can't relate to because you're too darn perfect, that's a turnoff, right? We've seen people like that. So forget about that. You might screw up. It's okay. And it's okay to say, whoa, wait a second. That's not what I wanted to say here. Let me think about it. They love it when you're going to show your vulnerability. So don't even try to be perfect. As a matter of fact, trying to be perfect makes you awful. And that's probably the biggest tip, is to just be you and be natural. Just be yourself, your own personality. You don't go up and do a presentation and turn into a different person. You're the same person in the front of the room. You're the same person in the back of the room. Be you, be yourself, use your charming personality, be natural. We don't want you screaming like this the whole time or in a voice that's not, just talk the way you normally talk. Be natural. Don't all of a sudden decide you're going to put your head down and not say anything because this is really embarrassing and hard. Just be you. Be natural. But it's that time. Do we have any questions? What's going on in the chat?
We do. And I want to just say something, if I may, Lorna. Thank you so much. I don't know. I think we may have talked about this before, but I've actually had quite a career in the audiovisual industry. And you nailed everything that I wish speakers and presenters knew or experienced. I just wish they knew, because it would absolutely help both sides to that information up front about the room sets, about the audio. My gosh, everybody doesn't, they always say they don't need it until they need it. And they were like, well, it usually just plays by itself. Yeah, it's still doing that. It's just not able to be expressed to the other people in the room. So I really commend you on getting clear information to everybody today. And I hope I hope all of you realize what great information you just got. Feedback, stay away from the speakers. That's what's causing it. Okay. So if there's speakers in the room and you have your microphone, you walk towards it, that's what'll cause that screeching sound.
And you know what, Brett, I usually can't even see where the speakers are. I didn't even know they were there. It's like, sometimes they're hidden place. So I walk around and when it starts screeching, I'm like, nope, I'm not going there.
X that part of the room. No, great. It's really good tips though, because a lot of people they look around for the AV guy like it's his fault, right? And it was doing it just fine when you were in the front of the room. Yeah. Anyway.
By that time, the AV guy is gone.
So
oh no.
Right. We do have a couple of questions though, but I did want to commend you on all that. You nailed all of the wonderful things that we think about in prior planning, preventing poor performance is what we call that. So thank you for that. We have a couple of people here. First of all, recognize that reading the notes, but someone was discussing the fact that a lot of times they have replaced reading the notes by paraphrasing it, but they do actually try to use the slide as part of their presentation. And I believe you followed up with having cards in hand. And I think that that was a really good way around that, but it's more like paraphrasing is what Paula was saying there.
I mean, I have my notes, but I study the notes beforehand. These slides, they don't have anything on them. If you could tell the whole thing with just these slides, then why do you need to listen to me? So
Right.
I don't want those notes on these slides. I don't even really want to see bullet points. Now, sometimes there are technical presentations where you need to put a couple of bullet points, and I get that. But I strongly recommend you don't make a slideshow something that stands on its own.
Mm-hmm. I think in one of your other presentations, you mentioned the fact that we all learn differently too. Some people are visual, some people are analytical, et cetera. And you pull it all together when you do a slide presentation for the visual people talking about what it is. So great. Thanks for that.
And I went through a phase, Brett, where I didn't use PowerPoint because, it gets such a bad rap. We've all heard death by PowerPoint. And that was a mistake too, because the visual people, they didn't know what to do with their eyes. They couldn't, they needed it. Yeah, they needed it, so I changed the way I did them.
Great. Here's a question for you. So I've seen some people use the handouts that like you're talking about, but I would love to hear your input about handouts versus follow-up email notes, because some people have actually said, I want you to pay attention to me today, and I'm going to follow up with some notes for you about what we're going to talk about. What do you think between the two of those, which is a better way to present, or do you have an opinion?
I would really rather see them give them some sheets with blank space on it so that they can fill in their own notes. If it's a policy or something like that you're presenting on where they need to have it, I don't like doing it in an email because a lot of people don't read email, and email's not really a platform for giving notes in that way.
Okay.
What you might do is make like a fact sheet and make it a PDF file and attach it to an email if you want to do something like that, like make a fact sheet and send that out afterwards. Mm-hmm. And somehow, if I were going to do that, I would really try to involve the audience in it. Like, send me the most important facts that you learned, and then I'll put that information all together and send it out. Somehow include them, but just doing it in an email, I think that's not such a good idea, because like I don't usually print my email message, so it's lost, after that. But if you give me a PDF file like a fact sheet, then I'd probably print that and look at it. But yeah, I don't know.
Great. And thank you, June, for your comment about that as well. Saw recently on YouTube video, visual, she says it's visual, audio, and doing. So it's, all of those.
Yeah, that's why I like to have them write. They listen, and people are different too, Julie. It's like some people are all visual. Some people need to do it. You got to cover all the bases. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. A couple of takeaways. If y'all have any more questions, please don't hesitate to put them in there. We'll get to them. If not, I just want to bring up a couple things that people have thought of, some takeaways that they have today. Don't try to be perfect comment. Found being real improves the audience participation. Thank goodness. And that comes from somebody who actually has to get up in front of people a lot of times and talk as well. I see you smiling there. I know you are. So thank you so much for that. But that's a very good takeaway. And I think that everybody would be more comfortable to remember that. You don't have to be perfect. And another takeaway that I have is something that I like the way you phrase this for everybody. Sharing information is what you're really doing. You're not presenting. You're sharing information. So whenever you share information, you're actually trying to engage with somebody and make sure that they're getting something out of it. Presenting, you can do in front of a mirror. So
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, and you're your best audience and your worst critic, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
oh, I could do that
Yeah.
better. No, I think it was perfect. You know, but thank you. I think that was a great takeaways. And I think that you really encompassed a lot of what it takes and all of these other presentations that you've given us leading up to this moment about how to really put together a presentation. It can be put together really well, but if you don't take a moment to breathe right before you present, to really evaluate the room, be there an hour early and just make sure that all these details are handled so that you can present effectively. It really doesn't matter how much presentation time you put into making it, does it? So I think that this was a beautiful way for us to understand what really goes into making your presentation work actually effective. So thank you so much for that. Let you close if you'd like. I don't see any other questions at the moment, but if you do, those of you who are rewatching this later, please send them in. We'll be happy to get them to Lorna and see if we can get you an answer and a response after the fact.
I just, one comment, Brad, about what you said about, taking a moment to breathe before. That's also throughout the presentation, which is why I'm saying, give yourself time to reflect during the presentation. There's ways to do that. I mean, anytime I start to feel flustered, like, wait, did I get everything? I'll just say, talk to your neighbor for a minute about this, which is great for them and gives me a minute. So, don't be afraid to just pause for a moment and give yourself time to think. And we've talked too about silence. Silence is so powerful, and it's okay just to not say anything for a few minutes. It's like you don't have to talk all the time. If I get really stuck in the middle of my head, like, what am I supposed to say here? I'll just stop and just give myself a minute to think out loud. And, it's like very powerful for the audience, and I'll just let it sit there for a minute and I'll do something like, and you know what else?
Well done.
So it's like, they've had a minute to reflect. I've had a minute to reflect. It's really good. So just to, reiterate, this is the series that we've had, and Brett's going to tell you how to access that. There is a book that has 25 strategies that goes into detail about the things I talked about today and a lot more. The book is focusing a lot on the presentation part, on the delivery part of the presentation, but it does go into some of the other things as well. So I would really appreciate anybody who wants to buy the book. Thank you. It's available on Amazon.com. The only other thing that I feel like I have to do is I have to just stop for a minute. I have to go find that free software and tell you what it is, because I feel bad about that. So I'm going to my little thing right here. Oh, it's called Any Video Converter. It's free. It's wonderful. It's easy. I'm going to type it in the chat. Any Video Converter.
Thank you for that.
So there you go. So that will convert video to MP4, which is very easy to insert into your PowerPoint. Just go up to the little insert button, insert video, and you can put the video right there. Any video.
And the quality is amazing. So you picked the right one.
Yeah, and I tell you, I have never had any problems if I embed my video. It plays every time. So, but if I try to do it from YouTube or something else, every time I run into their internet speed isn't fast enough. Oh my gosh, it can go wrong so many ways. So yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed this series, because like I said, it's been really comprehensive, and I'm always here to answer questions, Brett. I mean, if you guys have anybody who wants to get in touch with me, it's lkibbe@lkibbe.com, and I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm a speech coach, and I'm here for you if I can help.
Thank you so much. She is a leadership expert, and you're understanding why with every single presentation she makes with us. So we're so happy to have it. With that, allow me to share with you guys some of the upcoming events that you may be able to go to. I'm going to move over here so that everybody can see the screen, hopefully. And this is some upcoming webinars. First of all, right after this one, you're going to receive a survey. Please take 2 minutes to just go down it, fill it out, and we'll make sure that you have access to everything in the future. And don't forget to go to our YouTube channel for any and all of the other series prior to this, leading up to this with Lorna, as well as some of our other wonderful presenters. Speaking of, on November 18th, Driving Business with Email Marketing by Eric Spellman is coming up. On the 30th, we have how to write eye-catching product descriptions with Ashley Cook. Ashley Cook will be following up again on the 7th of December. Yeah, we're in December already. Hold on, slow down. I need Thanksgiving first. It is how to connect with your target audience with Ashley Cook. Okay, and on the 8th of December, Sell Your Value, Don't Defend Your Price by Brian Flanagan, an incredible and dynamic speaker as well. So with that said, you may have noticed there's a QR code up in the upper right-hand corner of that screen right now. You're welcome to just go there with your phone that I know you have in hand and you're checking your emails with because your camera's off. So go ahead and scan that. You can go there, sign up for these upcoming webinars. We're happy to have you. And don't forget, we are grant funded. And I want to thank a few people if I could: the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Central SBDC Regional Office, the North Central Texas College. And I appreciate all of you that joined us today. If you do need to get with an advisor, don't forget, you can always go to our website at the sbdc.nctc.edu, which is also at the bottom of the screen there. Make an appointment with an advisor. We're happy to sit down and speak with you about your business or your business idea and help you make it a reality. So with that said, thank all of you for attending today. And thank you, Ms. Kibbe, for being there all the time for us. We hope you have an amazing week. Everybody have a great day.